Welcome to Aging on the Suncoast. I'm your host, Jason Martino. In the spirit of National Grandparents' Day, which occurs in September, we wanted to shed light on a topic which does not get as much attention as other grandparent topics may. The caregiving role in the senior population is generally pictured as a spouse taking care of a spouse, or an adult son or daughter taking care of parents. However, a fast-growing segment of society has altered this picture. Children are often displaced from custodial parents due to a variety of reasons. Upon that displacement, these children are sometimes put under the care of a grandparent or older relative. When this occurs, caregiving responsibilities become both complex and hard to manage. On today's show, we've invited Larry Cooper, the Chief of Prevention and Intervention Services with the Children's Home Network, and Chris Matthews, the Outreach Coordinator, also with the Children's Home Network. Together, our two guests will shed light on the complexities of grandparents or other relative caregivers raising children. Chris, Larry, welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a great topic that we're going to talk about today. It's very near and dear to you. It's very near and dear to me for many reasons as well. And maybe it's best to kind of paint a picture of what a relative caregiver or a grandparent raising a child or children really looks like. Chris, you want to give us an example of what you've been through?
Well, I got my grandchildren because my daughter had mental health issues and drug. This is a common thing today. And there's also, they get them for different reasons, like it could be an aunt and uncle or a cousin, and death is some of the reasons that we get the kids. There's a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, so that must have been a big-time culture shift for you. And going from being a grandparent and all of a sudden to being that person, those children's prime custodian at that time, huh?
Oh yes, your whole life changes. I mean, you lose friends, your housing, everything changes when you get those kids because you're back to parenting.
Yeah.
And generations are different.
What a dramatic shift.
Very dramatic.
Yeah, and your kids or your grandkids nowadays are very successful. I had a great conversation with you before the show, so you've done a good job with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, despite all the barriers and the bumps in the road. Yeah, Larry, how about different factors? What kind of factors also play into a grandparent or a relative caregiver coming into the picture?
Yeah, so we really are seeing a lot of substance abuse and mental health being a big driver. We're seeing numbers of kids coming into the foster care systems around the state, around the country, and so those things added with domestic violence, financial problems, housing issues, a number of different issues that are coming up for parents that are making their job difficult is then translating to kids landing with a relative sometimes at a moment's notice.
And you've seen a lot. I've worked with you for a number of years, and you've seen things come and go, and you also see the dynamic shifting a lot too, huh?
Yeah, we used to, when I first started, used to see only older grandparents raising grandchildren, and now, you know, Chris and I were talking, a lot of younger grandparents, 40s and 50s, and they're still working and in the prime of their careers, and now having to stop everything and start parenting all over again, taking care of babies, getting kids into kindergarten, toilet training, all those kind of things that you're starting all over again, and right in the middle of a career or, you know, life's transitions, and so it sometimes throws families for a loop and puts them in a position where they don't always know where to turn first to find the help that they need for the kids that they're now caring for. Yeah,
you made a great point about the age. There's no natural age eligibility for becoming a grandparent. And the Area Agency on Aging has a program funded by the Older Americans Act, and for the longest time it would only help folks that were 60 and older. And we had long told the government that grandparents come in all shapes and sizes and ages. Please take a look at the age eligibility. So they finally did. They dropped it at least to 55, and we thought that that was very wise on their behalf. So I'm going to use myself as an example. If I was a grandfather and I had now a 9-year-old granddaughter on my doorstep and I needed to take care of this little girl, are there support systems out there for me, Chris?
Yes, there is. Kinship was the best thing that ever came into my life. And so for this person, if they contact Kinship, we'll get them in support groups. There's 8 of them a month in Pinellas County.
Right.
There's 4 day groups, which is adults only, and then 4 night groups, which is both adults and children.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a lot more about that in the second half when we really take a deeper dive into your agency and what you guys can do. How about legal supports? And when I say supports, I'm obviously talking about anything holistically, really, you know, legal or medical or health and human services. Is there other supports out there too?
Yeah, so there are organizations here in the Tampa Bay area that are really designed to support families with, if it's family law, civil issues, that help them navigate those things. So if it's applying for benefits or helping them get custody so they can meet the needs of the children that are in their care, those things are available. And I think, just going back to what you said earlier, one of the biggest challenges for a new grandparent is not knowing where to find those things. So we're constantly having to reach out into the community to let people know that this is really designed for you as a grandparent, because who really thinks about services that are designed for a grandparent? We know there's a million things for kids, but we don't always know that there's something designed for that relative who's now in this position. And luckily in the Tampa Bay area, we're blessed with the opportunity to provide that.
Great point. Navigation, in my opinion, is always been the hardest for a senior population, especially because people don't seek out whatever resources until they actually hit to a crisis point. And so, you know, when I made the comment earlier about what resources are available to me, your job is twofold as a kinship services network, is that you're also looking for resources for the children as well. And in this world of siloed types of health and human service types of organizations on here, your job becomes quite complex when you're trying to figure out what's good for the grandparent or the relative caregiver, but also what's good for the child, because that dynamic is really functioning together as a whole.
And we bring those groups together. We bring a lot of the service providers together to break down some of those silos and share information across the children's services and the elder care services that are available, because they often don't know that they're really crossing paths in the same home. Sometimes we have families with 4 generations living in the same household, and so they have a variety of issues, from child development issues to mobility and significant chronic health conditions, all happening at the same time. So we really have to blend those services together, and part of that is just communicating and inviting those kind of discussions to happen, which is exciting because there's so many things that cross over in these populations.
We're so proud that you're here, and your job is immense, and anything that the Area Agency on Aging obviously can do to support you is good. Let's talk about numbers. Do you have any local statistics or national statistics? What does this really look like?
Yeah, so around the country, there's over 7 million children living with a grandparent as a head of the household.
That's amazing.
And just in the Tampa Bay area alone, we have 40,000 children that are living with a relative full-time and without a parent in the home. So just in Pinellas alone, it probably equates to close to 7,000 grandparents alone that are in this position, caring for a child with no parent available. And it really shows up everywhere I go, and throughout the community, every school, every neighborhood, regardless of your economic background, your finances, your work life. It crosses all boundaries. So we see it everywhere.
That's crazy amount of people that are living in that type of situation on here. Impacts. Obviously, when you have that dramatic shift from possibly being a single grandparent or a relative caregiver, or living under the empty nest per se, and what kind of impacts do grandparents or relative caregivers experience when they have a new person in their life?
Well, the first thing is that the kids usually come with just the clothes on their back, and you get them, so you've got to figure out how you're going to clothe them. And then you've already usually downsized, so now you've got to look at, I got to get a bigger place to live. You know, so, and then that hits financially, because a lot of the grandparents are on Social Security, and they don't have the means to change their living environment. So they look out. And the most important part of our program that I look at, it's not a cookie cutter program. We take individually and see what they need. So when you come, there's different needs for everybody. You know, as Larry was saying, you know, it could be, you know, kids need things or the grandparents need things. We look at them individually.
Yeah, that's a great point about cookie cutter and serving folks holistically. Any more impacts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, in addition to that, you have the upset for the grandparent, because maybe the parent got arrested, maybe the parent's suffering with drug addiction, maybe a physical or mental illness, And so now they're trying to deal with the safety and well-being of their adult child, and then trying to figure out how to help the children who may have been traumatized, suffering in some way emotionally or behaviorally. And now grandma's got to figure out, well, what do I do now? I've never dealt with this before. And trying to figure that out, and where am I going to get the help? And sometimes grandparents are isolated from their peers because they might be embarrassed to even say something at their friend group to say, oh gosh, my daughter's suffering with drugs or got a mental illness, and so then they suffer in silence, and as you mentioned, until they hit a crisis point, do they reach out for that assistance? And so that's why we try to alleviate those fears. They're even worried because they don't have custody that the state would come in and take the children away from them. So if we go out to offer support, sometimes they're afraid that we're going to share something with the state that would have the children removed from their care, and so they're often afraid that that's, could happen. And so we try to alleviate all those fears. We're going to help them guide through that process, get the legal support that they need if they need to get custody or simple things to stabilize their worries, and make sure it's an easier path for them. We try to break down a lot of those barriers, but it could go across, like Chris was saying, finances, their own health and well-being, chasing around a toddler or elementary age kid, or just understanding what teenagers are going through today could be really challenging. If you haven't had teenagers in your home full time, it's great when you can spoil them as a grandparent, but now you got to discipline them and monitor their internet activity and their communication with people, and those kind of things now adds again another layer of complexity for the family, and they're often looking around for that help.
Yeah, that's all great points in here, and we can probably talk about that for days. We're going to take a quick intermission, and I appreciate it. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what the child actually experienced and what impacts that they do as well. Please stay with us while we take a short break. As usual, don't forget to have a pen or pencil ready. During the break and at the end of our show, we'll be running contact information for the Aging and Disability Resource Center's helpline and the Children's Home Network.
James is 70 and a writer whose joint pain has been a story in itself. His doctor prescribed a new medication that may not be affordable, even with James's Medicare Part D plan. James called Shine. Shine volunteer counselors can guide you to money-saving prescription assistance programs, including a program that helps pay Medicare Part D plan costs for limited-income seniors. Shine costs nothing but could save you time and money. More information is available at 1-800-963-5337.
Welcome back to Aging on the Suncoast. During the first half of the show, Larry Cooper and Chris Matthews help us understand the reality of grandparents and or other relatives raising children. Now let's examine the types of services the Children's Home Network can offer to assist these blended families. Chris, Larry, welcome back to the second half of the show today.
Thanks.
Where we left off on the first half was we were talking about the impacts, whether they're positive or negative, for the older adult that now has a child or children in their life. But certainly, that child doesn't come out of this situation unscathed. Can we talk a little bit more about the impacts that they might feel?
Yeah, a lot of times you get these kids, and the way they've come to us, they're traumatized. They need to have lots of deep counseling to help them through that. And then also in school, kids harass them because, why do you live with your grandma? Where's your mom? Where's your dad?
Yeah.
And that, embarrasses the kids. And so we have programs that help them get the children through that, especially the sport groups, the night ones, because the kids get to see other kids yelling out grandma
so
or
important.
aunt, and it makes it so it feels better.
Yeah, seems like it would be the norm. Right, exactly. Yeah, that's a great point. Larry, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, with the, sometimes kids are coming with academic challenges and delays. Maybe they've some of their health care needs have been neglected for a period of time. Emotionally, they're struggling because now they may have to move from where they were living, the home that they were in, or they might have been moving from home to home with the parents in this kind of unstable situation, and now the grandparents trying to set new routines and rules in the home, and now the kids are having to adjust to a new school, a new routine, a new lifestyle. They have to share a room. They might have to you know, be in a place that they're not familiar with, and or maybe even a relative who they're not as familiar with. You know, sometimes it was, you know, they've been to grandma's house, or they've been to the auntie's house or the cousin's house, but they never expected to have to be there and live there full time, and then they're worrying about their parents' well-being as well. And I think they always have a worry or concern about their parents, and so I think that weighs heavy on them. So we hear that, you know, they're distracted at school, they're maybe not as attentive, they might look like they're having attention deficit issues, but the reality is they've been through a lot, and it creates a lot of complexities for them. And so for the grandparent to even understand what they're going through, if you're a 3-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 15-year-old, it's going to look quite different. And so I think it's important for us to, you know, like Chris said, normalize that for these families, that you're part of a bigger community. You're not the only one going through that, to help alleviate some of the upset for those kids. Because kids want to be kids, they want to have fun, they want to do things that other kids are doing. And if they got a grandmother in a wheelchair or low mobility, that, you know, it's going to impact their ability to go and do and enjoy some of the usual kinds of things that other kids are doing.
Yeah, your point of kids should be kids. I mean, I totally agree. I think they grow up much too fast, and especially when they're in that situation where they gotta, you know, start to worry about their parents, where it should just be their parents worrying about them. You and I were talking before the show about the prevalence of children with disabilities, and that learning curve that grandparent has to do, or if they're in a new living environment, having a disability can be compounded by the fact that there's not modifications to help them, or the structure there that they were used to before. And so I see that as like a double impact on the older adult as well as the child itself. Now, you all work for the Children's Home Network, and Larry, tell us a little bit about the history of the Children's Home Network.
Sure. You know, Children's Home is one of the oldest charities in the Southeast. We've been around since 1892, as an orphanage. This is, you know, one of those turn-of-the-century places where kids who are orphaned or abandoned due to, you know, finances or the health or well-being of families back in those days. And over the years, we've kind of transitioned into a place that really focused in on the welfare of children. So today, we still provide residential group care for 60 children full-time that are in the foster care system. We license and recruit foster families to support children who've been removed from their parents. We have this kinship program that's designed for those relatives, and we're now in 6 counties. We're all throughout the Tampa Bay area, the Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco. And then we're also now in Orange, Osceola, and Seminole out in the Orlando area, because they're seeing the same things we are here, this really disruption of the family due to a number of issues. We also provide some other upfront preventative family support services, because our goal is really to strengthen families, keep them together, give kids the opportunity to grow, and have families really unlock their potentials for success. And we even hire grandparents and relatives into our program because we know they have a lot to offer, not only as service recipients but as providers. So we're really excited to have them on the team as well. Yeah,
and just a reminder to the viewers, the graphics are going to come up during the end of the show, and that'll give you all the information that you need to contact the Children's Home Network. And good luck in the Central Florida region over there. Obviously, they found themselves a stellar team in you all, and know that you're going to help out that population that's currently residing very similar to the Tampa Bay region over here. Kinship services. We heard this term come up a couple different times. What exactly is kinship services?
Go ahead.
Kinship services is a program that helps relatives and non-relatives become safe and stable in their homes, and financially, everything. We try to make it so that our program is like 6 months long, and at the end of that 6 months, that they are okay in their home, and that everything is good and working well. And then we keep them coming to the support groups, which keeps helping that, you know.
So we add in a professional or a paraprofessional case manager who will sit down with the relative, talk to them about all the needs that they may be having, and then how to navigate, as you mentioned earlier, how do you navigate all these different service arenas. If it's mental health, academics, legal, we'll help them navigate all those with a number of the partnerships that we have. We also offer some tutoring to those kids that are struggling with some of the academic issues. We'll make sure that there's some counseling placed into the home to support those family members. As Chris mentioned, the support groups are there to offer fun activities for the family so we can keep adding to the joy for those grandparents. So there's some fun things happening for them, as well as learning and getting education about some of the important topics that they're asking us about. So if it's, learning about substance abuse or mental health or school issues or just a number of things, they let us know. They tell us, and we go out and find those experts in the field. We bring them in, they share information, and it just arms those caregivers with the information they need to be successful. And then, as Chris said, we'll work with them for a period of time to meet some of those goals that they have, and many times with that, the kids will be stable. We'll help them identify where that financial aid may be out in the community, the resources that they need, if it's food, clothing, bedding. There's a lot of things that families often don't realize they don't have when you drop 2, 3, 4 kids in their lap on a moment's notice. And so we'll help them navigate all those wonderful array of things that are here in the Tampa Bay area. It
sounds like you're really filling up somebody's toolbox with a wealth of different tools to have them be sustainable for as long as they possibly can. Now, Chris, I know how fond you are of support groups. I'm just as fond of them as well. I've actually witnessed a lot of different support groups and the dialogue and the dynamics that take place in there. Let's talk a little bit more about support groups. Where are the support groups in Pasco and Pinellas County?
Well, I know Pinellas County because that's where I work at. I don't really know Pasco.
But we know that you at least have some of them.
We have them up there, yes. But we have them in South County. We in Pinellas there at Enoch Davis Center.
Okay.
And Mid-County, we have them at the Senior Center at Pinellas Park.
Okay.
And we have the Aquatic Center in Clearwater.
Yeah.
And Safety Harbor Neighborhood Family Center. Those are all the night groups. So wherever you live in Pinellas County, there is a group near you. So you can never use that excuse, oh, there's nothing near me. We make sure that we hit the whole county. Also for the day groups, I run one up in Tarpon Springs at the Shepherd Center. And then the other 3 day groups are done at restaurants. And we pay $5 towards their meal.
Nice. Yeah, so you guys are really blanketing Pinellas County. I know just from history of working with you guys that you cover all of Pasco County and Hillsborough County and most likely all the other counties in the central Florida region.
Yeah, so just to add, in Pasco, we have a group that meets up in Zephyr Hills. We have a group that meets on the west side in Newport Richey. So we're really, from east to west trying to make sure, because as you guys know, Pasco's kind of broad in its scope. So from east to west, we make sure we have groups there. And throughout Hillsborough County, from West Tampa all the way out to Plant City and down to South County, there are group opportunities for families to step in. They can find all that information anytime, day or night on their smartphone. They can go on Facebook and find us there. There's a number of places that they can find the latest dates and opportunities for, again, fun. We'll be doing some fun stuff for Grandparents' Day throughout the month. So there'll be opportunities for them to join us and really get to meet other caregivers and grab some support and really enjoy the wealth of things that we share with families throughout the year.
Cool. The do you offer respite services or sitter types of services to allow that grandparent or relative caregiver to go to that support group and feel comfortable that that child is being taken care of?
Yeah, we work closely with a local respite provider, Park. We also work with mentoring programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters. That often gives those grandparents and relatives a few hours to take some time off to join other peers, do something for themselves, meet with the support groups, go to lunch, go to a doctor's appointment, and get some of their self-care needs met. So those, we do offer, and even in the night groups, there's activities for the children, so the grandparents still have an opportunity to join together independently of the kids. They'll have a meal together. They'll separate out and do some fun things individually as caregivers or with the kids.
Yeah, and respite's so necessary. In my part of the field, which is generally people that are 60 and older, we know how important that respite is, but it's just as important, I imagine, for a grandparent that's 45, 46, 50 years old that needs that to kind of that break a little bit, that separation, so they can communicate with adults and talk about what's going on in their lives. Counseling, I know that you guys offer that type of modality to kind of help people out holistically. What kind of counseling opportunities do you all offer for them? Is it mental health counseling, or are we just like transitional?
So we have a program that's a part of the Children's Home Network called the Pinellas Support Team, and they offer behavioral support. So the kids are, demonstrating, oftentimes because they can't talk about some of the things that they've experienced, they demonstrate it with their behaviors and how they act at home or at school. And so we add that layer of added support, so the counselor will go into their home, again, arm the caregiver and the kids with tools to help them communicate and set limits and really learn how to work together, even with all this stuff happening around them. How do they work well together with their school teacher, their after-school program, and in their home? So the counseling will help them kind of navigate and manage those behaviors a bit better.
Great. You're just serving people from left to right and top to bottom, and that's going to be integral to for them surviving in this dynamic. We touched about a little bit earlier on the fact that legal has to play a role in these caregivers' lives on here. And we know that there's a bounty of legal providers out there. I know Gulf Coast Legal and Bay Area Legal that serve the Tampa Bay region over there too. What types of things are they doing to support these grandparents or relative caregivers with their children?
Well, a lot of times you don't have custody when you get into kinship. And so we let you go to Bay Area or to Gulf Coast, and they help you navigate that system because it's a lot of paperwork and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And then there are also sometimes, I lived in a 55 plus. By the way, I still live there.
Yeah.
It's, you have to get a lawyer, you have to fight, and stay, and I raised my grandkids there. But that's one of the big issues because you hear it all the time. A grandparent got their kids, they lost where they live. What I tell everybody, fight.
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, that housing is sometimes a negative impact for these families over here. So I heard that, that Gulf Coast or Bay Area Legal, they can offer some pro se guidance and advice. Anything else that they offer?
So they'll do some representation. So if you have to go to court to acquire temporary legal custody of the children, they can help do that as well. They can address landlord-tenant issues, public benefit issues. They can provide legal advice, which I think helps alleviate some of the concerns that the caregivers have. And sometimes it's as simple as a power of attorney. It's just a document that the parent notarizes that allows that grandparent to meet the basic needs of that child. So again, sometimes there's some complexities or options. So the legal aid folks will do some education, they'll come to our meetings, they'll share information with the caregivers and really allow them to understand what are the options, and then they'll work together to navigate that for them.
Yeah, and it sounds like your team is going to link all these caregivers and these children up to these resources, and we think that is fantastic. Chris, Larry, you guys have been great guests on the show. I'm glad that we were able to shed light on this once again. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this month's broadcast. We also hope this episode offered you valuable information on where to seek help if your family situation is one like we described today. We'll be back next month, and until then, please make every attempt to seek out the resources and services we discussed today.
James is 70 and a writer whose joint pain has been a story in itself. His doctor prescribed a new medication that may not be affordable, even with James's Medicare Part D plan. James called Shine. Shine volunteer counselors can guide you to money-saving prescription assistance programs, including a program that helps pay Medicare Part D plan costs for limited-income seniors. Shine costs nothing but could save you time and money. More information is available at 1-800-963-5337.